Midnight shift employees of Reddit, what's the creepiest experience you've had during your nighttime shift? I work on a cargo ship and the night shift take turns doing fire control rounds of every deck in the engine room. Maybe a month back I was in the middle of one of these rounds. I was on one of the lower decks where we load long haul trucks like sardines. So tight you have to walk sideways between them. I'm shuffling along between these trucks and trailers with music in my ears. I'm looking at the temp on some of the freezer trailers to make sure it's all good. And it is, as far as I can tell. After just turning away from a trailer, I swear, I hear a weak voice just behind me. Logan, it says. I quickly pop an earplug out and turn around, but there is no one there. I stand still for a couple of seconds and listen. The row of trucks I'm standing in is maybe 12 trucks long and 7 wide. Due to the darkness I can maybe see for 2 trucks down the row to either side of me. That's weird, I think. I should be the only one down here. I grab my radio in my breast pocket and call the bridge. Bridge, this is Logan on deck 3. Yes, Logan, bridge here. Did you guys call me just now? No, why? No reason, I say, and end the call. Now I'm starting to calm down a little and start moving again. Right when I go to put my music on. There it is again. Logan. Now I'm really freaked out. Last time I wasn't 100% sure because of the music in my ears, but now I really heard it. Someone said my name right behind my back. I'm frozen in place. I can't move. I'm pressed shoulder to shoulder between 2 trucks. I'm cold from fear all over. It feels like someone is standing right behind me in the dark, looking at me. Like if I turn around I will see a man shape in the row behind me. I hear it again. Logan, the voice says. Logan. Finally, after what feels like an hour, I turn my head and look behind me. Darkness. Nothing. What I do see, however, is the faint light of my phone in my back pocket. It is currently in an open call to my father. Call time is about 5 minutes. And now I can clearly hear my father on the other end. Logan, he says. Why the hell are you calling in the middle of the night for? Apostrophe. Security guard here. For about 2 weeks during Christmas time, our facility shuts down. The only ones present are the guards. We work long, boring shifts, and all of the lights except for the office areas are shut off. This was about 10 PM one of those nights. It's already surreal being alone in a huge facility in the middle of nowhere, at least a mile by car from the next nearest human. I'm walking around, no flashlight because I'm a dumbass, and like straight out of a horror movie, I see a person like shadow move between 2 tall shelves. I start jogging down there, trying to be quiet so I can just observe if it's a person or my mind playing tricks. I track this person for about 10 minutes, only getting brief glimpses of shadows letting me know where they are, until I took a different route and finally saw the shadow of a person approaching me. I got out my light on my phone and stupidly yelled, "Security, WHO the fuck is there?" It was our maintenance coordinator, Mark. His face was really red and he looked like he'd been crying. I was like, "OS, hey man, sorry, everything okay?" He kinda mumbled, "Yeah, it's alright, I have some stuff to do in my office," and walked off. I heard later he and his wife got into a huge fight around that time and she left him and went to stay with her parents. This incident was only a few days before Christmas, too. I never mentioned it to him when everyone came back from holiday, but I figure he just wanted to come somewhere safe and get his mind off of stuff, and I still feel bad for probably scaring the S out of him on a really bad night. I used to be a crew chief at IHOP during the night shift, but there wasn't a crew, lol, it was just me and one cook. One night a man came in and seemed so friendly and insightful. He was telling me about his time as a music producer in LA. He was so polite with me throughout our conversation, something I can't stress enough lol. A few more customers came in, and as I took care of their orders the man I spoke to started talking to himself and laughing. Then the laughter got louder and louder and almost maniacal. He then went on a huge rant about the world, but he shouted in different pitches throughout the rant, even disturbingly changing his facial expressions. He scared off 2 of the other patrons and I had to call the cops. When they showed up his whole demeanor went back to normal and he politely walked out with the police but looked back at me and winked. I was scared the whole night. I worked at IHOP graveyards for 7 years. The fights during the bar rush were next level with 3 bars nearby. I delivered a baby in the bathroom, hand to God I'm not joking. But the all-time most IHOP thing ever was a fight that broke out in the smoking section back when that still existed and the glass walls still separated smoking from non-smoking. So there's like 10 people in there, drunk, loud, laughing. My kind of night. Out of nowhere stuff starts flying and I get merced with a boysenberry syrup in the freaking head. Before the cops show up every single syrup container has been thrown and there's syrup dripping from the ceiling. My manager was like, please don't quit, just go home. You know, just take tomorrow off. I had to hose myself off with a garden hose before I got in my car. It's hysterical now, but if I even smell a hint of boysenberry I immediately get straight up hostile. Syrup is like glitter, you never can get all of cleaned up and everything is sticky forever. Syrup getting in your eyes is extremely painful, who would have ever guessed that? Oh, and in 7 years we got robbed 3 times. Around the 3rd time I was like, please just shoot me, this job is literally killing me anyway. I was 3 months into being a driver graveyard shift for a well-known company. Anyways, never got an uneasy feeling at this job site warehouse ever. But this one night about 2 AM felt off. I could shake it. It was like I was being watched, but I was the only one at the warehouse and we do have security that would watch us on CCTV. The security isn't on site. Literally a warehouse that we keep products in and ship back out. Anyways, back to me feeling weird about 2 AM as I was alone picking up more items to run back out to stores. I kept shaking this feeling off. I'd pause, look around the parking lot outside and the other surrounding warehouses. There was not a single sound, just crickets and wind. I felt off. I decided to roll down the warehouse doors and secure my truck and step inside to take a leak. I was in the bathroom inside and actually end up having to poop when my phone alerts me. It's security. I ignore the first 3 calls. 4th call I pick up. MR. Steam shovel, we've detected movement at the warehouse inside. Are you secure? Where is your current position? I tell them I'm not in the warehouse and doors are all secure. They make note the alarm system is active and doors outside the warehouse are closed, etc. I'm wrapping up pooping and I get the goosebumps. They said they would check the cameras and call me back to stay put. I finish up and look out through the doors to the warehouse. It's empty besides product. Doors are definitely secured, nothing's unlocked. You couldn't get in, trust me. They call back. MR. Steam shovel, we've detected movement again. The sensors are saying there's movement in the warehouse. Are you currently inside the warehouse? I'm literally looking outside the warehouse at this point. Nothing is there. I report back, nothing is there. Again I have the chills. Anyways, throat is lumpy. Talking on the phone with security, I decided to leave the warehouse and do my run. Quickly I run to my truck and take off. I'm gone for about 2 hours and they call me once saying again movement detected, and they don't seem to see anything on the million+ cameras. I arrive back with some cardboard boxes we have to break down into different bins. I'm by myself this time in the actual warehouse and I get this feeling I'm being watched. Can't describe it, but it's like someone was around the corner just staring at me. I couldn't shake it. I finished up my work. I get a text message before my shift that day from my boss saying we need to talk before my shift. Long story short, he tells me someone died in the warehouse 10 or so years ago and it's haunted. We walked out to the warehouse and right where I felt uneasy at the bins he stopped without me saying anything and said, "This is where I always feel someone is watching me." I never had another experience besides that night. I like to watch horror movies while I'm doing midnights and while watching The Ring. The phone in the movie rings at the exact same time my fax machine phone rings. I answer and nothing for a few secs. And I get a normal work fax lol, but still freaked me out. I was a night shift security guard at a cemetery, and I worked alone. I was doing my rounds one night and I noticed the metal gate to one of the old tunnels was slightly ajar. Then I heard voices. Now these old tunnels were used to store high value equipment. And policy was that if I found a door unlocked I was to enter and secure the area, and only if I found something amiss to call the police. To be fair, we found doors and gates left unlocked all the time. And of course I have no idea where the light switch is and all the lights are off. So I have to go creeping through these dark tunnels with a flashlight having no idea what I'm about to find. Turns out one of the maintenance guys left a radio on and forgot to lock the gate. The woman who came into the store, smallish town convenience store, rambling about how the government had swapped out her kids for imposters and how she needed to find a way to get rid of them. Luckily some of the police in town knew me, and they knew who I was talking about when I called. Last I heard, a family member adopted the kids and the woman was getting help. Most disquieting was during the Rodney King riots. There was looting relatively near our grocery store. They closed the store, but the night crew chief walked around the store, handing us baseball bats and said if the store was breached we should feel free to defend ourselves. Nothing happened, of course, but was a surreal moment. Not midnight shift, but I worked at a Starbucks in a fancy hotel that opened at 3 AM. Cops came in one morning to arrest a guy, but he wasn't in his room. He was at my coffee shop. The guy had come by to get coffee as soon as we opened every day for like a week. Never thought anything was wrong. I don't even know for sure what he did, but they came into the shop with full geared SWAT guys. Not too creepy, but the whole thing was utterly terrifying. Naked old guy dancing around an empty big gulp cup in the middle of our parking lot, chanting like he was trying to summon Cthulhu. When I walked past the halls of the call center I worked, I heard keyboard and mouse clicks. There was nobody there. I just shrugged off and kept working. I guess this is the opposite of creepy, but this is what comes to mind. I used to work at a bar restaurant that closed late. We often wouldn't get out of there until 4:30 to 5 AM after cleaning up. It was in this old brick building that had some kind of history, although nothing crazy enough that anyone ever talked about it much. One night these ghost hunters, who had some sort of podcast or YouTube channel or Facebook group or something, had asked if they could come in overnight and look for paranormal activity and film it. They came in at like midnight on a slow night and started getting set up. The idea was they would spend all night in this possibly haunted building looking for ghosts with their equipment. The only thing, the few of us working there had spent countless nights in there and hadn't seen anything, obviously, so it was just incredibly bizarre and awkward watching these people set up cameras all over while I finished wiping down the tables. I once saw a guy come in with no hands asking for gloves. Used work and audit, lots of late nights, 2 AM or later, working overnight was not uncommon. Our office tower was the first true skyscraper built in that city and was the tallest building around for many years. Naturally, it became a popular spot for suicides for many years. It was haunted AF. During the day when office workers were everywhere it was pretty much normal. Late at night, after 11 or so, the building would feel very different. The way that office worked is that lowly audit drones like us didn't have assigned desks, but had 3 rows of long tables for floating stations. We faced each other with a divider lengthwise across the middle of the tables, so 6 rows of seating. Teams often work late, and even after midnight it was common for 1 or 2 teams to be in the office. For some strange reason, even if we started the evening spread out across all the rows, we would end up clustered together on the last 2 rows by the end. The seniors experienced plenty of stuff and some became pretty numb to it. Seniors would insist we all leave together, accompany each other to the toilets, even the guys, and that no one was to work late alone. One time it was only my team of 4 working late, past 1 AM at that point. We're busy typing away at our laptops, flipping through papers, occasionally leaning back in our chairs to ask a question. We started hearing typing coming from a different corner of the office. It started when we started and stopped when we stopped. Spooked, the senior said to ignore it and quickly finish up. We hurriedly pick up the pace and do our best to ignore the phantom typing. After that, we start to hear rustling paper and small thumps getting louder, like files documents being dropped on a table. We're getting freaked out now. The office seems dark even though it's brightly lit and there's this terrible feeling in the air. Without saying a word we start packing our stuff because we're not paid enough for this. Suddenly the lights above the rows in front of us flicker and we all gasp in fear. We're staring wide-eyed at the front rows when one of the office chairs turns and rolls from pretty much the left side to the right side of the office. We bolt out of the office. Forget the laptops and papers, we just grabbed our phones, keys and etc and we ran out of there. Didn't even turn off the lights. And then we were back in the office the next morning like nothing happened. I made it a point to leave by midnight after that. I'd rather work on stuff on my bed than stay in the office. RN here. I used to work nights and one night I was sent home early because we were overstaffed. So it was about 1 AM. I am driving home on empty streets and stop at a red light. I sense movement and I see an animal walking towards my car. It's a very tall animal, looks like a coyote but it was as tall as my car. It is staring me down and then as I lock eyes with it, it starts running towards my car. So I step on the gas, run the red light, and booked it home. Never have I been so freaked out by something like that. My husband thinks maybe I was partly falling asleep or something but I remember it so clearly. I had to park along a road for my midnight shift. Which side I parked on was based on where there was a free spot. There was a traffic island between the 2 lanes. One night I parked and started walking towards work when a drunk driver in a pickup truck slammed into the sign on the traffic island. The front of his truck ended up over the crosswalk part of the island. If I'd parked on the other side of the road and crossed the street I could have been hit. When I was in the oil field, I had to take a pee so I walked to the edge of my work site and let it rip. Halfway through a mountain lion walked right by me, like within 10 feet. That was scary. Another time I'm standing on the edge of the site and shining my flashlight into the empty field and I see all these little green emeralds. There's thousands of them all over the field and I have no idea what they are. I walk out into the field about 30 yards or so and lean in on one of them. Yep, they were all spiders. I'm a cab driver in a small mountain town. I've seen a plainclothes police officer hit in the head with a skateboard by a young teen having a psychotic episode. He died from his injuries later. I've seen a cougar running up the main street hissing at every movement. I've seen a man get into my cab wearing a huge unsheathed machete strapped to his leg and ramble about in a deranged fashion until he told me to pull over and he ran away. All these things are not necessarily scary as the occultish type things you hear about night shift, but they were still scary. I'm a female cab driver BTW and yes I carry pepper spray. I worked the overnight shift at a 7-11. One night someone dumped a dead body behind the store. Cops found it the next morning. I've always wondered if I sold the killer a Slim Jim or something. Another night the store got swarmed with like 200 people in Halloween costumes. They stole the place blind. I was too terrified to say yes. Manager was super peered. Night shift at a hospital I used to work at. Get report at beginning of shift. Patient is non-verbal due to dementia. Literally the report I get is they have such advanced dementia that they haven't spoken an intelligible word in several years, just mostly grunting and moaning. This hospital was old. Very old. Tiny rooms, kind of a dark place at night. I'm basically trying to get this person's heart rhythm under control for most of my 12 hours night shift. It's 230 am. I've been running a cardiac drip on this person for hours trying to get things under control, then all of a sudden I see a lethal rhythm on the monitor, touch, briefly and go into the room to check on the patient. Look at monitor again, the rhythm is now totally normal. The power in the entire building flickers very briefly and the patient says in perfect clear English, "I was born in 1895, I need to go home," and repeats it several times to my absolute horror. I go get another nurse and patient is now muttering unintelligible sounds again as they had been when I assessed at beginning of shift. Shit you not, this really happened. I don't believe in ghosts, but this incident made me wonder for several months after. Who knows, maybe it was just a coincidence and the multiple meds they were on. I once spent whole night at work. But it felt like half an hour. I was so confused, I still am. Working as a service advisor at a truck stop. Had a hooker come in crying. She left. 10 minutes later a trucker comes in wondering where said hooker was. I don't know. Not like I'd tell him anyways. Truck stops are interesting, to say the least. Especially graveyard shifts. Honestly just a lot of homeless people trying to get my smokes and change when I go on break. The day crew. Please don't delete this, I want to read it in the morning because I am too scared to read it now. Worked overnight at Walgreens for a few years. My manager noticed some banging types of noises coming from the stockroom in the back of the store. I go on lunch at like 3 am. I come back and cover the front register while the cashier goes on lunch. Before I do, though, I notice like 8-10 cop cars on the security camera in the manager's office. I go to cover the front register and a cop with a police dog, all dusty, come running up towards the front of the store. Apparently 2 guys were using like handsaws and were trying to break into the T-Mobile next door and miscalculated. They got a small hole through before they ran due to the cops coming. I think they caught one guy and other guy escaped. My manager had to give testimony at the trial like over a year later. Not exactly creepy but definitely rememberable. Only work nights for about a month, so I'll get back to you on better ones, but here's what I've got so far. I work in an addiction rehab facility. We had a guy the other night get so angry at the nurse's station because she was taking too long, less than 45 seconds to get his meds, and politely asked him not to scream at 1 am, that he eventually had to be escorted out by the only male staff on duty that night and our bidet clinical supervisor under threat of calling the police on him. He ended up being discharged and dropped with his belongings at the bottom of our driveway. The facility is on a huge hill, and told to figure it out from there. Patients have absolutely threatened staff. Haven't had it happen to me personally yet, but my co-worker had a cup of soda thrown at her the other day and was told she'd look good bleeding in his basement. There's a small forest in back of the facility, and problem patients like to sneak off to run around in there. One night, we were missing 3-5 of them and took a golf cart out to search for them. If you've never been on a golf cart in pitch black woods, I don't recommend it. Almost ran over a skunk on that same golf cart. It blended in too well and my co-worker didn't see it until the last minute, at which point she just screamed and pointed. I almost leapt out. Ghostly voice over our walkie-talkies came on and kept repeating leave over and over between garbled sounds. Turns out it was a staff member who was too far away to be heard clearly and was trying to tell us a patient wanted to leave. Still spooky, though. disheveled crackheads playing hide and seek behind the building in the bushes at 3 AM. Enough said. I used to deliver pizzas in high school in the mid-90s before GPS and Google Maps. I lived in the same small A town my whole life and could have probably delivered pizzas blindfolded. We stayed open till 1 AM on weekends. I was one of the only females that delivered till close because I wasn't cute and could handle late night drunks. So I get this order basically 30 seconds after we stopped taking orders and I decided to go ahead and do the delivery. It was way out in the country. I don't think we've ever got an order from there. So I drive out there and when I turned down the dirt road I immediately felt something off about the whole thing. The road was barely drivable and kept getting more and more narrow. I drive all the way to the end and there's no houses, no lights, nothing, so I turn around and drive back slowly to just make sure I didn't miss anything. My headlights hit something white on the side of the road that hadn't been there before and my creepy meter starts screaming. It moves, it's a person crawling into the road wearing white. So I tear off to go get help. I come back with a cop friend. We get back to the exact spot and he informed me there weren't any houses out there and to stay in the car while he draws his gun and starts checking it out. After a few minutes he comes running back to his car calling for backup. He tells me there's blood and teeth on the road. Yeah, I was basically paralyzed but I'm not leaving him there alone. So I'll lock my doors and reposition my car so that I'm not in the way of incoming police and my headlights hit a man stumbling toward my car with no bottom jaw. I honk and scream for my friend and this guy falls on the hood my car. Turns out this guy owed drug money to the wrong people. They took him out there and shot him in the face. They thought he was dead and left. He came to missing the lower part of his face and couldn't see, so he just kept walking hoping he'd run into someone before he bled out. He later died in surgery the next day. The creepy part hit when I came back with a bloody hood and cold pizza without payment. Police pulled phone records and there was no incoming calls logged during the time period my manager took the order. But I know the phone rang and listened to her take the order because I was kind of mad about the time. I could hear the male voice talking to my manager but they could never find any record of call or the number it came from. I quit the next day. I still have nightmares about that night and I get sick feeling when I smell pizza to this day 25 years later. They never found out who the man was that died because he had no ID or tattoos and there wasn't much of his face left, probably an illegal immigrant. A buddy of mine was on a surf trip to Australia. One night they were walking the beach and found a broken surfboard and something covered in little crabs. It was an arm sheared off at the elbow. I used to work at a nightclub and every night after my shift I had to take a bus and walk for 10 minutes back home. One night in the middle of the walk it's just me on the street, no cars, everything dead silent. I see far away this guy that looked in distress. I take off my headphones and hear him talking to himself but I couldn't understand what he was saying. He sees me, stops and just stares at me for a few seconds. I get a horrifying feeling that something will happen, feel the adrenaline rush through my body but I keep walking normally. Then he starts running towards me screaming, "Where's my brother?" repeatedly. I just turn back, I start running the other way. Fortunately I was faster and managed to get away but I can still hear him screaming around the blocks looking for me. That was a terrifying experience and I remember feeling so relieved as I walked into my building and locked my door. But after that, every night I started walking with just one headphone on and tried to stay aware of my surroundings the whole time. Maybe it was just a crackhead and he wouldn't harm me but I didn't want to take the chance. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.